key question is whether Boris Johnson was going to get a deal with the EU now. In your heart, in your waters, do you think it's going to happen?
Absolutely. The Prime Minister is fully committed to getting a deal. And I think, if nothing else, Andrew, you, your viewers, I hope the whole country has heard, certainly through what we've seen in Parliament over the last few weeks, that sheer commitment and determination to ensure that, A, we leave on October the 31st, and also that the entire machinery of government now is focused on getting that deal and is planning and preparing to leave on October the 31st with a deal.
So let's talk about the deal. You voted 3 times and spoke in the most vociferous terms against Theresa May's withdrawal agreement. If Boris Johnson manages to deal with the backstop issue, is that okay by you? Is that it?
I've been very clear. I'm a member of his government, and when he brought me into government along with other colleagues as well, we were clear to him, as he was to us as well, that our focus is on leaving on October the 31st with a deal. And our job right now, Andrew, is to absolutely give confidence to securing that deal and backing the Prime Minister in everything that he is doing to secure that deal through the negotiations that are currently underway. So in answer to your question, the answer is yes.
Question. So yes, if he deals with the backstop, Priti Patel votes for
it. We need to leave. You know, this is no longer a discussion about the previous deals and everything that's happened in the past.
Let's talk about what it is about. Boris Johnson himself has said that the landing area, as he described, is fairly clear. The contours of the deal are becoming fairly clear. And what they mean is Northern Ireland staying closer to the EU in all sorts of aspects than the rest of Britain. You're happy with that?
Well, look, we're in a negotiation right now, and it's not a public negotiation. And I think, Andrew, it's important to recognise... No, let me finish. It's important to recognise that there is a great deal of work taking place right now. The backstop, the backstop is exactly, the anti-democratic aspect of the withdrawal agreement. That has to be addressed. That is completely the area that he is in right now. And not only that, there is the backstop and the political declaration, and where we want to end up as a country, which is naturally with a best-in-class free trade arrangement and ensuring that we are removing the anti-democratic backstop.
2 things about that. First of all, it was the Prime Minister speaking in the House of Commons, you can't be more public than that, who talked about the contours of the deal, which I've just been describing, so it's not a private thing. And second, if you are negotiating with the EU, they know what our proposals are, so the only people you can be hiding it from are people watching this programme and the British public generally. I come back to the contours of the deal. It's about ensuring that Northern Ireland, there is no border in Northern Ireland, and that therefore there is a limited border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. So on food and agriculture, an all-Ireland settlement. Ian Paisley himself, the old Ian Paisley, famously said, "My voters may be British, but the cows are Irish."
Yes.
And that carries on. Now, there are lots of things to get through. The EU has to agree that there will be checks in other places across the island of Ireland, but that seems to be the basis of a deal, allowing Northern Ireland to be closer to the EU after Britain leaves the EU. Is that acceptable?
Well, look, we are working through that right now. And obviously, the Sherpas have been over last week. The Prime Minister is obviously going to Luxembourg this week as well. I'm not going to preempt any of the discussions right now in terms of
I just want to know what your own instinct is.
Well, no, my instinct is, I'll tell you what my instinct is that we have to leave, and we have to leave with a deal on October the 31st. And there's no point right now trying to prejudge the discussions that are taking place. We're at the stage, let's not forget, 7 weeks of a new government, a government that has been turbocharging our planning and preparedness. But in that 7 weeks as well, we've been working. The Commission and other member states are only just coming back after the summer. It's important that those discussions go through the proper course, and they're led by the Prime Minister and obviously our Brexit Secretary and our Sherpas.
The reason I'm asking you this is that when it was Theresa May's deal, you expressed real concern and anger and worry about Northern Ireland being treated differently. And now the proposal from your government looks like that's exactly what it's going to be, and you're in favour of it. You used to talk about the smell of betrayal in Theresa May's withdrawal agreement. You're going to be proposed something fairly similar, and you're going to be for it.
Well, that's not quite true at all, because the reality is, we have to deal with the backstop issue, and people said under the Theresa May deal that the withdrawal agreement would never be considered or looked at again, neither would the political declaration. We are in different territory right now, and so it's no point arguing about the past. We are moving forward now with a government, as a government, collectively focused on leaving, but leaving leaving with a deal.
With a
and
deal.
that is the work that's taking place right now. And if nothing else, I think, it's a sharp contrast to some of the rhetoric we've heard over the last few weeks, that our focus is on getting a deal and working together to achieve that.
We will come on to the rhetoric, I absolutely promise you. Meanwhile, we're all waiting for the Supreme Court decision to see whether or not they back the Court of Session in Edinburgh, who said the prorogation of Parliament was illegal. Presumably, if the Supreme Court backs the Scottish judges, then the government immediately calls John Bercow and resummons Parliament.
Well, look, we'll wait and see. Again, I don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday. Perhaps you do, but there's now inconsistency between the Scottish courts and the English courts as well. So that is a fact. So let's not prejudge what happens on Tuesday. Depending upon the outcome, obviously the government will take the action that will then follow.
Okay, we're talking about the law. I asked Sajid Javid last week, you may have seen, about whether or not how Boris Johnson was going to get out of this bind, whereby he says under no circumstances will he ask the EU for an extension, but he will obey the law, which now demands that he ask the EU for an extension. And he couldn't give me an answer. There is a plan. What is it?
Well, I think the plan right now is to continue to work with the EU to get a negotiation. But I think
if that doesn't happen,
but look, on this point as well, look at what has happened in Parliament over the last 10 days or so, the last 2 weeks. We've had MPs constantly trying to frustrate Brexit, delay Brexit, cancel the EU referendum, and also constantly kick the can down the road. This government is not in that space whatsoever. The Prime Minister is clear that we are going to leave on October the 31st. Well, they have, but at the same time, it says something actually that those MPs that want to defy the British public, are now trying to say to our Prime Minister, you need to go cap in hand, basically, to the EU and ask for an extension. Now, the fact is, if we're working to get a deal, then that is the best way to deliver the referendum. Okay. That's exactly where our efforts should be concentrated.
Talking about previous Prime Ministers, David Cameron, as you may have noticed this morning, describes you thus. He says, "It was the behaviour of the employment minister, as you were then, Priti, that shocked me most. She used every announcement, interview and speech to hammer the government on immigration, even though she was part of that government. I was stuck, though, unable to fire her because that would have made her a Brexit martyr. He wanted to fire you because you were disloyal."
Well, first of all, let me say something. I mean, I was a minister in David Cameron's government, and it was a privilege to serve in that government, and I enjoyed working with him and many of my colleagues. Obviously, the referendum has happened, we've all moved on, and the fact of the matter is we're now working to deliver that referendum mandate. That is so important. There is no point going over the past, and I have to say...
Well, he says you left the truth at home during that campaign. Well, that's a very serious thing to say.
Well, first of all, I think, if we talk about the issues that we're now speaking about in terms of delivering Brexit, many of those issues went to the heart of the vote to leave in 2016. Whether it was taking back control of our borders, our laws, our money, those issues are still prevalent to the debates and the discussion today. And the reality is it's the job of this government, Conservative government, to deliver on effectively what was a 2015 manifesto commitment as well, to give the referendum.
You mentioned taking back control of the borders, one of the crucial things that you were talking about in that campaign. Can you explain to people watching, if they're coming through Heathrow Customs or they're coming into Dover on the 1st of November, what will be different?
Well, there'll be a range of things that will be different, first of all, in terms of the checks that we are putting in place. So there'll be...
It'll look different.
Well, it's more than looking different. There will be checks. So, for example, we'll be bringing in stronger criminality checks to ensure that people that have criminal records are basically being checked over in terms of their status. There are a number of other things, though, Andrew. You will be well aware, and I know you've spoken to other colleagues on your show too, about the schemes that we're putting in place. We have the EUSS scheme, which obviously gives EU citizens in the UK their status very clearly. But going before that as well, after that, on the 1st of November, we will have a new system, EuroTRL, which will then bridge into a bigger system, which will be that points-based Australian-style system that will give us greater control over our immigration system, greater control of our borders, and will also mean that we'll be delivering the referendum mandate in the way in which we've said so, and the way in which the government has been very clear that we want to take control of immigration policy.
Sorry, before I come on to that, can I ask you, you did say originally that free movement was going to end on the 31st of October, and it's not. You've changed your mind. Why?
Not at all, because free movement will end in terms of EU law as it currently applies, and that is the point. There will be a difference. Now, the fact of the matter is, on the 1st of November...
You're going to lose in the courts, won't you?
Not at all, no. On the 1st of November, we will have a new system because EU law, in terms of free movement, will end in terms of the legalities of EU law. And so, therefore, we have to be prepared to, A, have a different system, which we are bringing in, but importantly, have new checks and controls in place so that we can check people that are coming into the United Kingdom. That is the right thing to do.
For your new immigration system, you're going to have a new immigration law. You don't have a majority in the House of Commons at the moment, so that's going to have to wait until after the next election. It'll have to be part of your manifesto, therefore. Can I ask, in terms of the higher paid workers, what is going to be the minimum salary that they're going to expect before they come in?
Well, currently, I've recently just commissioned the Migration Advisory Committee that are looking into the entire construct of the points-based system. So it's not just actually about minimum thresholds, but it's also about the economic aspects of a points-based system. We want the brightest and the best. But Andrew, we want the brightest and the best. And this is the point about having a system that doesn't discriminate on the basis of your passport and where you come from. We want a system that facilitates and supports the economic growth and well-being of our country, which, by the way, is something that I also spoke about during the referendum campaign. Previous Conservative governments campaigned for that too.
Right.
And that is effectively now commissioned with the MAC. And we're working with them to ensure that we can get the right components together so that, by January 2021, we get a system that actually means that, yes, we can take back control, but demonstrates confidence to the public in terms of the way in which we are regulating and controlling immigration.
Alongside Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, you signed a very serious and specific public pledge to EU citizens living amongst us in this country. Here's what it said. There will be no change for EU citizens already lawfully resident in the UK. These EU citizens will automatically be guaranteed indefinite leave to remain in the UK and will be treated no less favourably than they are at present. And you signed that, and you have not lived up to that.
Well, no, that is absolutely right, because we have, and that is the case to the EU settlement.
400,000 people who've applied for settled status have been given something called pre-settled status, which sounds like unsettled status, and they have to reapply. It's not automatic and it's not indefinite. They have not been treated honestly.
So they have been treated honestly, because the fact of the matter is pre-settled status is exactly compliant with EU law, as was...
It may be compliant with EU law, but it's not compliant with
that. We are replicating the current rights of EU citizens within EU law, and that's exactly what the EU SS scheme does. It's not discriminatory at all. So if you've been in the UK for less than 5 years...
I don't have to apply every 5 years.
Pre-settled status is exactly the same as it would be within EU law right now. So there's no difference whatsoever within the EU framework.
There may be no difference with the EU law, but it is not the same. It is not the same as their current status, because they have to reapply, and there are all sorts of extra bells and whistles about how long they're out of the country,
so
as
Andrew,
to whether they're allowed to stay here. It is not the same. You said it was going to be the same,
pre-settled
and it's not.
Status is no different. For right now, if I give the example of an EU citizen that has lived in the United Kingdom for 3 years or 4 years, pre-settled status is exactly how it should be under EU law. If you've not lived in the UK for more than 5 years, you will receive pre-settled status, and that's exactly how it is in EU law. And all we've done is replicate that in UK law. And by the way, in terms of the system...
If we leave, because it's still perfectly possible, if we leave without a deal, will we be as safe, will we be as secure in this country as otherwise?
Well, of course we will, because cooperation in terms of safety, security is our predominant, it's our paramount feature of this government. That is exactly what we work to achieve. So and we work with our international partners as well, consistently, in terms of securing our country and our borders.
If there is a suspected rapist in Greece or Hungary or somewhere, how will we be able to get that person extradited back? How long will it take, and how will it work?
Well, we'll work currently. I mean, if we want a deal, first of all.
Those agreements.
So first of all, we want a deal. So, if we get a deal, we'll be within those agreements. Secondly, we're working already with our counterparts across Europe and with other systems within the European Union framework. So with Interpol, for example, we've also set up a new international criminal
crime.
Well,
those agreements,
we will be in those agreements. So we will be able to be in Interpol. We'll be able to use red notices. We'll be able to use the Council of Europe mechanisms.
But it won't be as good, will it? It won't be as smooth, as fast, as efficient as where we are now.
But we will be able to use them, and we'll be able to mutually benefit from those tools, and also through our bilateral agreements with other countries to share information and to share intelligence, Andrew. And I think it's important to say this for your viewers to know. When it comes to security cooperation, that matters not just to us, but it matters to our counterparts.
Let me ask you